Those numbers came in on election night in 2016. It was like my whole world was like crashing.
I'm watching the numbers come in.
Just hitting refresh on the county. That was me on the couch.
And I'm like, they need a better website. What the hell?
City of Reading has a very vibrant entrepreneur ecosystem.
Everybody's opening up something every other week, which is awesome.
But we're one of the fastest growing cities in Pennsylvania. How do we support what's already happening, and how do we get it to that next level?
What's it going to take from, people like me and people like us?
I think
Jack.
good to see you, man. How are you?
What's up, bro?
Good, nothing. How are you doing?
Day after the election.
Yep. Yeah, I know that feeling.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do?
That's it, right? It's a process. You made your case. The voters made a decision.
614 votes. That was a split.
That was the final count.
It's not final. It's not official,
Right.
But I mean, looking at it, reading a few things, 614.
That's close.
Yeah. It's a bummer. We were talking about that before this whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like the whole thing is your fault.
Yeah, it definitely sucks. Like I said, I've been on both sides of that equation, and I personally find like my most growth, personally, professionally, as an individual, has come from the losses, and I think it really puts a lot of the work into perspective, and it gives you, for me, that motivation for the next one, right? Because you're learning, you figuring out how to better yourself, how do you better communicate and manage, but then also that deeper sense of community service, like, because that's really what it's all about, right? You're trying to serve the community, and it just helps. For me, the losses help refocus.
Yeah, I feel that because, last night I was up till midnight, just sitting there. I'm watching the numbers come in.
Just hitting refresh on the county. That was me on the couch.
And I'm like, they need a better website. What the hell?
I know somebody who can do this.
Why don't they just call me? I'm like, why am I hitting refresh? Why is the list so long?
Why is it so hard?
That's what she said.
My wife's like, I'm going to bed. Like, see you later. Good luck.
My wife did, I think by 11, I think it was 153 reported. And she was like, I'm good. And I waited. I got to 201.
Yeah, she went to bed at like 9:30.
That's when I started paying attention. I was like, 9:30. Okay, let's go. 9:30. Here we go. I was like, this is going to happen now.
Yeah.
This is it. But it was funny because I got one text from a friend of mine. She was like, hey, this is what we did. She was volunteering somewhere and just showed me real quick the numbers from that one ticket. And I was like, ooh, I didn't like it. And like I felt my heart just sank. Yeah. And my stomach got queasy. And I was like, no. And then the rest of the night came out and I was like, man. But it's right. And that's a good question. How did you handle it, dude? Like you lost. I don't know how many times you lost. You don't have to tell me when, but so you lost. And like, what'd you do, man? What did you do, Jack, to help yourself?
So I do unplug. So when I started, many, many moons ago in this, after the election, every year I would fly out to Denver for about a week, visit some friends. And that was my chance to like get away, like literally get away from it. And it gave me time to think and process and start looking at the numbers and be like, okay, what did happen? What didn't we happen? And process it. And then come back and get ready for February. And that's when the process starts all over again. And, probably one of the hardest losses was Otto Voigt was running for state treasurer. And we visited all 60 some odd counties, some of them more than once. We were in the car a lot. There were times where we would be, because we lived near each other. Otto's a Berks County guy. We lived near each other. He would drop me off. I would go home, take a shower, grab another suitcase, and then like run back down to the car and we'd be on the road again. So you develop these bonds with these candidates. And like I said, like you just gain such an appreciation for them, their family, their commitment, their service. And when those numbers came in on election night in 2016 and we lost, it was like my whole world was like crashing down. And, it was hard because then you would look at the other elections that were happening and some of them were winning, others were losing. And you're just trying to figure out like, what did I do? Like, what didn't I do?
Right.
You know, if I had dropped that other mail piece, would we be a different story? And like that's, you start going down these like.
I was going that last night, dude. I'm my own worst enemy, bro. I am my own worst enemy. This morning when I woke up, I was like, I'm not going to be a puss today. All right. I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to be depressed.
No, man, it's okay to feel your feelings, especially after something like that. Because you're going 120 miles an hour for so long. Yeah. And then it's just a hard stop.
We all did that.
Yeah.
Like that's why the whole team did that. Mm-hmm. Joe did it a lot too. Joe and Jill, they were doing the socials. Joe's doing the videos. Heather's making graphics. You know, it's all this together. Mm-hmm. You know, we spent a lot of time and energy. Like, you know, and I can say that, like, you know, technically client comes in, they pay for this, right? So they paid for that. We went above and beyond,
right? Because
it gets personal, you know, and you want to win, you know, you want to show people that you know what you're doing. You want to show them that the things that you create are going to mean something. Right. The goal is going to be hit. And then, like you said, dead stop. And then like last night I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Like it killed me. And I was like, geez. And the relationships, absolutely. Like I became close with Lauren. Her dad is awesome. We talked to each other on like a different wavelength. I met her mom. Her mom is amazing. We went to one of her fundraising events. Me and her mom talked for like half an hour.
Oh, wow.
Just sat at the table and just talked. And she was so inspiring. She knew just so much about so many things.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, and I wanted to I was like, man, I wish I could have just recorded this whole conversation we had, because it was just amazing. And I even told Rick, her dad, I was like, your wife is a beautiful person. She's just awesome when we were walking out. So yeah, the relationships are there. They become like family. It doesn't take long to be family. No, not at all. It can happen really quick. And that's how I felt.
And Otto, so fast forward, me and my wife were getting married. Otto and his wife were at our wedding because we had that deep bond, and I still feel, you know, we still are very close and we're still very connected. You just learn to find the meaning in the loss over time. And I think that's a very valuable lesson just in life, because it's not always going to be successes. It's not always going to be wins. It's not always going to be, you know, this linear trajectory upward. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have losses. So what do you learn from it, right? How do you set yourself up from that?
What'd you learn?
I learned a lot. I learned a lot about so just my career in politics in general. I learned a lot about people and what motivates people, because that's really what elections are, right? You're telling and selling this vision for the future, and you're trying to get buy-in from the voters and get them to support that vision, right? And you learn what motivates them, what makes them tick, because very few people, especially the election after the presidential, voters are burnt out. People are tired of politics, especially the previous presidential was wild, right?
And this was just a primary.
This is just a primary. Yeah. So these are always some of the lowest performing elections, and very few people, it's a very small universe of people, are waking up on election day and saying, I got to go vote for the Prothonotary, man. We got to do that.
Right.
Our Prothonotary is doing an incredible job, and JD is a wonderful public servant. So I was one of those people who woke up and said, I got to go vote for JD.
Yeah. I mean, I did yesterday. I made, my kids vote.
Oh, that's like, cool.
Yo, get out there and vote today. You know who you're voting for. She's like,
yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm like, Yeah, sending out the text messages yesterday, you just go back and forth like you were saying earlier, man. You start going, should I have done more of this? Should I have done more of that? I'm still going through that list in my head.
And that's, while it's useful, it's important, that debrief internally, I wouldn't put too much stock in it, right? Because you made the best decisions you could make with the information and the resources you had available at the time. And the other thing in elections is it's so easy in politics to Monday morning quarterback it.
Absolutely.
But you are spending, a whole year plus making decisions, trying to get a singular outcome at the end of the year. You have no idea if the decision you make is going to work until 12 months later.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and for you, it was 12 months. For me, it was 3.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm like, we're going.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then we have meetings and we're taking photos and figuring out what we're going to do next. And you have a plan in place. And then you do a couple plays and you're like, oh, that plan's not going to work. We got to go this way because we want to zig, but we should really zag. And that's the fun part.
That's the part that I learned a lot was, the famous Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Yeah. That's politics, man. Like you have a mail plan, digital plan, text plan, and then boom, something drops and you're like, all right, this is what we got to do.
Yeah, it gets wild. This one was weird. This one was, dare I say, dirty. I was like, oh, okay, we're going down these roads. And even a lot of common folk got involved with these posts. I'm like, what is going on, dude? People get crazy. I got weird messages from multiple people. We had people threatening us, as a marketing company.
Wow.
Sending us this crap freaking threats through Facebook messages. And I'm like, it's an election for a judge. No, I'm not. Well, judge is pretty important.
Judge is important.
Sure. But I'm like, geez, like the amount of like basura that came out yesterday, boy, especially the past 2 days. I mean, yesterday, Monday, Sunday, it was wild, dude.
It's hard. And people are passionate and that passion manifests in really odd ways. I can tell you just wild stories about doing some statewide stuff in New York and some stuff in New Jersey where very similar, right? Like I'm like sitting there like, are you okay, dude? Do you need help? But you just can't take stock in that. People are going to be people and they're going to do what they're going to do.
I know, but sometimes you just get so angry. You're like, dude, I'm running a marketing campaign. Like I'm doing ads. And they get so personal, sending me stuff, telling me I got the wrong idea. It got wild, dude.
When I ran for county treasurer, I don't want to say it got dirty. It got aggressive, right? That's how I don't like to say politics got dirty. It got aggressive.
I like that.
And I'm trying to be a little positive.
Sorry, man. I'm not trying to put you like. I know you got a job still.
It's aggressive, right? And same deal. Some of the rumors that were spread about me, some of the implications, they were hurtful. But you don't let that detract from your mission because your ultimate mission, right, is to give back to your community, and that is to me just the ultimate test, right? If people are willing to spread rumors, lie about you, etc., that means you're onto something, right? Like you gotta be doing something right to make these people feel. Yeah, exactly. So.
Absolutely. So did you win that election?
No.
So
I lost in the primary. I went against a 3-term incumbent. Okay. I was about to rotate off West Reading Council as council president, and I had to make a decision, right? Like, do I continue running for council or this position that I'm passionate about, the county treasurer's office? Do I make a go? And I decided to make a go, and I don't regret doing it. I don't regret a single decision, tactic. anything. I made so many incredible friends through that process. We're still all close. We still all get together. And I am grateful that people heard this guy, no idea who I was, some kid from West Reading, but really liked the message. And I did get a lot of votes as a first-time candidate. And I'm very proud of that because on paper, right, I should not have done as well as I did. So you'll find these little gems of things to be proud of.
And you never ran again?
No.
You just were like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good for a while. I get that question a lot. Are you going to run again for something? And I'm at a different place in my life, personally, professionally. And right now I'm very focused on my current job, serving as a managing director for the city. I'm committed to the 600 employees that we have who rely on me day in and day out, and finding ways to improve in very real ways the city of Reading through that role.
Which I want you to do, brother.
We're doing it.
I want you to do it, man. I want to get into that.
Yeah, my goal is really to move you guys downtown. That's actually why I'm here. To do the pitch.
You know what, dude? All right, look, I'll put it to you this way, bro. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I would love to see Reading just be an amazing place to be, period. We need that. And when I saw that you took that gig, and I saw English Bradley. Okay. So so right away, my brain was like, oh, two people I dig are now there. No disrespect against anybody else. I just didn't know them.
Right.
But I know you. I know English. I know the love you have for Reading. So when I see that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Yeah. Well, I very, very honored to get this role. It's a big job, right? Like I was saying before, 600 employees, $300 million across all of our funds, 24/7 services, emergency services in the fourth largest city of Pennsylvania. And when you look at our demos, we're one of the fastest growing cities in Pennsylvania. So pretty soon, I think people are going to be saying Philly, Pittsburgh, Reading. And a lot of how I see that is, what are we doing today to prepare for that moment in the next 10, 15 years, which really in the grand scheme of things isn't that far away, right? Do we have the housing? Do we have the right staff infrastructure? Are we providing the correct services that align with actually the needs of our community? So I'm very excited about the role. It's been a little under a year. And I tell people, look, Reading is ready, right? We are ready for our comeback story. We are ready for our next chapter. And everything good that's happening wasn't given to us. We earned it. We earned it by working together, by prioritizing what matters.
Yep.
And I think you're starting to see a lot of those results now, and they're starting to come in. Because this stuff does take time, right?
Yeah, it's not 5 minutes.
No,
it's not at all.
West Reading. So think about West Reading's revitalization. It took 20 years, 16-ish, whatever, to revitalize essentially one street.
I think Barnhart still had hair.
Yeah.
he showed me a photo of him when he was back in city council, I believe, when that nation started something. I was like, holy cow, dude, you had hair, old school style.
Yeah.
I dug it.
Think about that. 16 years basically for one street, to turn around one street. And it takes constant work, constant attention, consistency. So now magnify that or intensify that to the city.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger, boy.
Reading is physically a large city too. So we're about 10 square miles, depending on how you measure. Lancaster's about half the size of that, for context, right? So we are geographically a sprawled out city.
It reminds me of Queens.
Yeah, it does.
Just growing up.
It does.
This is now the new Queens. I don't know. I've been there lately. I'm like, what? This is Jackson Heights? I grew up here. I remember Jackson Heights when I was a kid. This is wild, But going into Reading, I'm like, oh, it's like Queens. I totally, I dig the vibe. I know what's going on down there. But what do you think it's going to take, bro? And I don't, there's government. I know you're on that side. That's great. What's it going to take from, No, people like me and people like us.
I think we need, like, so clearly Harrisburg has taken a bet on Reading, right? They're betting on Reading. The CRIZ, the train, all these different tax programs and incentives. The state is investing in Reading. We need the private sector to match that investment. We need them to seriously think, hey, maybe we should, like, all kidding aside, move our business into Reading. Maybe we should open up something in Reading. Maybe we should do more in Reading. And I know that Reading hasn't always been friendly to do business in and to work in, but the mayor is really prioritized for his second term, I'll say, setting the conditions for success, right? So his first term was largely Act 47, getting out of Act 47, COVID, managing COVID. And again, right, so we're out of Act 47. We have some pretty decent size surpluses. You know, we're in a good place financially. Our bond rating is high. We're ready to start doing things. So now it's about looking inward, improving our permitting, hiring more police, hiring more fire, making sure that when people do invest in the city, they're going to succeed.
Right on.
That there's consistency, that there's a process that gets to yes.
Are there benefits for businesses to go down there?
So the big one right now that everyone's talking about, right, is CRIZ. And that is a state program where a local authority, and the mayor is created with Representative Guzman and Senator Schwank. The authority designates about 130 or some odd acres throughout the city in these little zones. So we've prioritized Penn Street, some areas south of Penn, some like just sort of scattered about strategically. So for commercial projects in those zones, certain eligible state taxes can be redeployed into those projects. So that makes it easier to fund and finance and do some really cool things. This is what they've done in Lancaster. A version of this was in Allentown. And they don't do this often. It wasn't just like, oh, here you go, guys. You're asking for it. Here you go. No, we had to submit this massive application, this massive plan. What are we going to do? What are the projections? What happens? It's a 30-year program, right? And our projections, we worked with an outside consultant, projected over $500 million in economic growth over the next 30 years as a result of this program. That's transformational.
Right on.
So I think that there's a lot of opportunities. I think when you look at and really look at what's happening, now's the time to start getting involved and getting in and doing things in Reading. We're ready, man.
So that's interesting, because I want to see the comeback. I hope I'm around in 30 years to see the comeback.
Comeback's happening now. It's happening right now, man.
We're 30 years good.
Yeah.
So you're all right. So explain this to me. So we got the CRIZ happening. You guys said you designated 130 acres. You said so. Those 130 acres, that's for people to like buy property or to build property or to.
It's so if you have a project. So I'm trying to think of like a good example. If you want to build a commercial project, right? Let's say you want to do stores, whatever, storefronts. You would present that project and to the CRIZ authority and seek funding and get the project approved through the authority. And they would essentially act as just another source of income. But the good thing is, like, it's coming from taxes that you already pay. So it's not like new money. It's not anything. It's your taxes going into your project, which is a very cool concept.
Oh, so I go in there, I find this corner property. I'm like, that would be perfect to put a marketing company.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, think bigger. It's got to be like a whole studio.
Right. So it's like almost like a media company, right? Yeah. And you have like let's just say FXV wasn't part of it. And then like maybe my buddies EB were in another part of it. And like, we all worked together in this one place, even like Don Carrick. Don Carrick actually had dreams like that. Studio 413, he actually wanted to build a place where he would have me in it and he'd be in there and Joe would be in there. So it's like almost you walk through those front doors. And if you're a small business or a larger business here in the area, you could literally get everybody in one building.
And I think even like projects where it's like, if you're already existing and you're looking to expand, right? You're looking to grow. The CRIS will help fund and finance that. Like, this is such a interesting time to seriously look at Reading as an investment opportunity, because there's so many tools, and we now have cleaned up our permitting process and our inspection process where, I think we reduced permitting time like 60, 70%.
Nice.
That's huge, right? So now if you're not waiting around for inspections and permits and whatever, and it's going to take under 30 days, that's going to go a long way, right? That speed, that consistency, that's going to really impact your decision making when you're looking at businesses.
What about if I'm starting a new business? Is that something that would help me out?
Probably. I think it really depends on the project first.
Right.
The CRIS, like all financing tools, whether it's the tax abatements or whatever, they're not going to make a bad project good. But what it's going to do is like kind of like be the sprinkles of a sundae, right? It's going to help it be better, and it's going to help it really pencil out a lot stronger.
So it's more, I guess,
it's like a financing tool.
Yeah. So it's more for people who have bigger dreams.
And that's what the city of Reading is, man. City of dreamers.
Right. Because I'm thinking, it makes so much sense. Because I'm asking you these questions. I know they might sound remedial, but it's because I have you in front of me.
Yeah, no.
So it's like, why not really understand? So now what this tells me is, just listening from this, is like, okay, so it's not maybe about bringing FXV to downtown Reading. It's more about Freddie Vasquez and maybe his wife, Jill, finding a piece of property where that can be, created with the help of CRIS. And then we build this place where not only FXV, but other maybe cool, unique media companies go down, or creative people in general take over, like, like a corner spot. It's like, oh, that's like the art section of Reading.
That would be a really cool project. So it's funny you say that. Like, part of this conversation has also been about like revitalization, right? What does revitalization look like for the city of Reading? And I hear so often, if we can just help, copy West Reading into Reading, or why can't we do what Lidditz did, or whatever. And I'm kind of like, I get it, but also the city of Reading has a very vibrant entrepreneur ecosystem.
Everybody's opening up something every other week, which is awesome.
And it's it's different. Like, it's not concentrated. It's spread out, right? Because we're sprawled out. So you have the opportunity to create, in my opinion, really cool, distinct neighborhoods, districts that feel like when you're in Philly, you're in Fishtown, when you're in Center City, right? So we have that opportunity to create that here by using the CRIS to help amplify it.
Yeah.
And, then the question is, so if we're going to create like these little districts and communities with these little mini main streets, how does that all feed then into Penn Street, right? So the strategy, the approach that this administration is taking is very different. It's not how do we copy and paste, but it's how do we support what's already happening, and how do we get it to that next level? There's, you can go to any couple blocks in the city and you have restaurants and stores and all of that. But how do we help them get to the next level?
That's a good question.
Right.
How do we get the people to believe? How do we feel about the people that are in Reading? Do you think they support that kind of action? Do you think they know what's going on?
Do I think they know what's going on? Probably not as much as I would like. right? And some of that's on us. I think, we have to do a better job of telling our story, telling our comeback story. But what I just find fascinating is like the entrepreneurs in Reading, like they'll get it done, right? If they're on board, they'll do it. They are hard workers, passionate people, and like brilliant. I mean, these are some of the smartest business people that I've met because they're making it work. Just them and their wife, or just them and right. Like so I tend to default where if we give them the tools, if we make them aware of the tools, they will do something that I'm not thinking about, right? They will hit it out of the park. I'm that's so confident in our entrepreneurs.
I'm with you on that. I think it's definitely about them knowing. Like education is the piece. That's the thing you're missing. And growing up in a primarily Latin family, especially on my dad's side, everybody's very skeptical.
Yeah.
They're skeptical about everything. I mean, I remember having a conversation with a gentleman a few years ago, and he wanted to open up a bank in Reading, and it was all about like, helping out the Spanish community and making it like bilingual and making sure they understand. I'm like, yeah, because we don't trust anybody. It's really hard. It's not a dig, but it's reality. And I grew up in that reality, and I still see it out here.
Well, it's a lack of trust, right? And again, like I don't want to defend and say like, oh, everything's great, right? Like the reputation that the city has been earned over decades and decades of mismanaging the public trust. And what I think like the current mayor has done really well is building trust with residents, with the community. He takes that part of his job, right, the steward of the public trust, just incredibly seriously. And he understands that role and the role that a mayor plays in managing that. So I think we're building it. We're building that foundation, and from there we're going to be able to do more. But it is not easy.
No,
it is not easy. And every time you're like one step forward, something happens and it's a step back. But it's that consistency, right? Like it's a big deal when the mayor shows up to a shop, right? Like this is the CEO of a massive company, right? A massive organization coming to support you consistently, not for social media clout, not for content, but because they believe in you. And that's the message that the city's trying to push out now. We believe in our entrepreneurs.
That's awesome, dude. I can get behind that, man.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, that's what's going to make it happen.
It's fun when you look at these revitalization stories and communities across the state, right? There's typically like Erie has Erie Insurance, right? That's a massive multi-billion-dollar company. Lancaster had, a collection of other big companies, and Reading doesn't have that. We don't have a multi-billion-dollar company headquartered in the downtown. We don't have these massive institutions, right? But what we do have is a network of people, entrepreneurs, colleges, hospitals, that all believe, that are starting to believe that Reading can be more. And I do think that's our secret sauce, right? It's a more authentic, grassroots-driven revitalization. And I think we're going to see a healthier revitalization than other communities where it's, well, when the economy gets tough, I don't know. But I think ours is going to be more resilient.
It's funny, the economy. That's a crazy thing, because a lot of the best businesses that were ever created happened when the economy was crap.
Yeah.
Like I started mine, I took the leap technically in 2008. You know, I didn't pay taxes till 12, you know. But in '08 was like, well, you know, it was like, well, I don't have a job, so I guess this is the time to do it. And that's when, you know, everything was crap. I think a lot of people don't give themselves credit or give the human race credit, where it's like, oh, the economy's down. So what? I've seen people do crazy things, you know, give people something that they want, something that they need. They'll make it happen.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I've seen it all the time. And I think the economy, I understand why it would be a factor. I think people just get really scared. You know, I mean, COVID, I'll tell you something. COVID sucked, right? Blah, blah, blah. Everybody hates COVID. But that year was one of the best years I've ever had during COVID, you know, which I never would have thought that would happen. When the second COVID started, I was like, oh, I'm glad it's only me. You know, 'cause I can get by, you know what I mean? But we had one of the best years, I think, because you try to figure out a way, or you have to take advantage of the roads you are given. When everything is black, but you see like one or two roads that are lit up, you got to go down one of those roads and see what you can take advantage of and see how far you can get. And I think, you know, we can do that. I think Reading is the perfect place for that. I love being down there. One of my favorite things to do is on Sunday mornings, because there's no traffic. There's nobody out. I get my scooter right from Drexelwood. I go all the way to the pagoda from my house. I'm going down Main Street. You know, I'm going down Penn Street. Nobody's in my way. And I just look at all the architecture that is in that city.
It is so cool. And the blending of, you know, these, you know, Germanic, Dutch architecture styles and, you know, Latin America, South America, Caribbean America influences. Like, it is just such this cool blending of cultures. And I think Reading has such an opportunity. I'm so optimistic about where Reading is going. We have all the right assets, all the right tools, and we're starting to put it together in a cool way that's unique, that's distinct, that's Reading's way.
Right on.
You know, we're learning from other communities, but we're not copying and pasting, right? We're building something for Reading, for our residents. And that's the cool part about the job.
Yeah. So what's up with this train, bro?
It's coming.
When we get in that train?
Choo-choo.
Choo-choo.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so the mayor serves as one of the founding members of the Transit Authority. I think, like everything else that the federal government's involved in, we're reassessing. But from what I can tell, I mean, we're still committed to that timeline of you know, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And I think there's, you know, I don't think it's not going to happen. But I do think the timelines might shift. But, you know, they just made some new appointments to the federal train board. They're all positive about restoration of passenger rail from Reading to Philly, not Philly to Reading, Reading to Philly. Right. Marketing matters.
Marketing matters. I hope so.
But that's going to open up such a world of opportunities where, you know, you're not just limited to Reading or Berks County. Like, you can get these jobs. And I think then the alternative too is, so how do we get people in Manayunk wake up one day and say, hey, I want to go spend the weekend in Reading, right? Because what I'm worried about is the opposite. Me and my wife wake up one day and say, let's go to Manayunk. But there's nobody coming back.
Right.
So we're making a ton of investments in quality of life infrastructure. So culture, arts, parks, things that can really be a draw and make people want to be here. And my hope, right, is that one random weekend trip turns into a regular trip, turns into, hey, maybe we should look at houses here, right? Like, how do we use this as a way to bring people? How do we use this as a way to really show people the Reading that we love, and that this is a cool place for us to be and live, especially, you know, if you are a creative type, right? We have a vibrant creative community here. So how do we get them to come here and move here and start their families here? That's how I'm approaching the whole train conversation. Like, I can't control what happens with the federal government, right? You know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, just like I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. So
that's legit, dude. And we've spoken to other organizations around here. That's the main thing. Is how do we keep? I mean, there's five universities right here, or something like that, and these kids are all going to school here. How do we keep them here? You know, and that's something that we've spoken about with, you know, GRCA, Meet Greater Reading. We're having conversations. That's one of their goals, is to convince the youngins. You know, when you're here hanging out for school, well, why don't you hang out for your 20s? Why don't you find somebody, and now you're here for your 30s with your kids? You know, whatever the case is. Yeah, dude.
yeah, that's what happened to me.
It's not a bad place. I mean, what are we missing?
I think the big thing is housing. I think back to when I graduated Albright. I had a job right out of college, but I didn't have anywhere to live. And luckily I was able to find an apartment at a pretty good rate. But if I couldn't find an apartment, and it was kind of like freak, like, oh, I know this guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, like this like weird,
Who has a closet in the basement?
I mean, kind of, but he was like, he's about to lease it, but I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Whatever. Sign me up. And, if I didn't have that freak, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon-esque experience to get an apartment, I'd probably be back in New York. Right. Like totally different life trajectory. So I think the housing, affordable housing, is key, right? Housing for people that are young professionals, starting their careers, starting their lives. And then I think it's partnership with some of these larger employers to create or, better funnel job opportunities for these kids, right? Because that was the other thing I had, was a job, right? And I never left. So I think that's probably overly simplistic, but sometimes I think the simplest answer is probably the best answer.
But that's what happens, right? I mean, we came here, we rented here for 2 years before we bought a house, but we came here based on research. My wife did research. She saw it's a good school district. We have 2 daughters. What are we going to do? We came here. We liked it. We found an apartment right off of State Hill Road, those Madison apartments, whatever it was called. There for 2 years and just hung out. There's a park over here. Oh, there's the beautiful park by the museum. You go into Reading, you can catch a show, you can catch the Royals, you can go watch the fightings. There's you can walk anywhere. And West Reading, even from when we got here to where it is now, has even gotten better. So everything here is perfect for a young family, for an older family, for anybody who just wants to hang out. So I think it's just a lot of it is education, and convincing, especially the people in Reading, that the goodness is coming.
I do, and so I've been using this term a lot, especially recently, because I was at this panel discussion not too long ago, and there a couple comments were made about like, oh, there's silos and we're not getting anything done and we're being held back, and I just felt like that's not accurate, right? And as I'm like looking around, I see a lot of people like nodding their heads, and I'm like, I feel like that's like a crutch, right? Like just to say, well, we can't get things done because nobody's working together. Everybody's working together. All the universities are working together to do exactly that, right? How do you fight the brain drain? We just wrapped up, I joke around, we just wrapped up, gala season where all the nonprofits had their annual dinners and the rubber chickens and the Karen Foundation raised almost $1 million for their dinner, right? I think the Boys and Girls Club was like a little around $500,000 or something. That doesn't happen in silos, right? That shows that you have a community that is committed to each other, that is supporting one another. Because it's the same people writing all those checks for like 3 weeks. So it shows that this is a community that cares, that wants to see progress, that is willing to put money to seeing progress. And that's the type of community that I want to be part of, that I want my kids to be part of. And that's why we're staying here, right? So I think that's part of it, of when we talk about educating and talking about Berks and talking about Reading, we just have to keep that sense of optimism that we know we can do better and we are making steps towards being better. And it's easy to lose sight of that. But I think it's really important as leaders, as I hit the mic, as leaders that, we sort of display that optimism. And I know that's hard the day after an election, but
yeah. You know what's funny though, dude? You know what's crazy? I'll tell you this right now, and I'm being totally sincere here. You made the day better.
Oh, thanks.
Just listening to like what's happening and what's coming to Reading.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to lose. Mm-hmm. It's a bummer. Okay, Fred, get over it. It's terrible. It's a bummer. It sucks. But it's only one little piece of what's really happening with the grand, scheme of everything that's happening is going on here. Like you said, you got to be humble. You got to learn from it, and that's great. But now talking to you, it's like, okay, what's happening in Reading that means maybe more to the common person,
right?
Like judges are important. I'm not saying it's not, but you hope to never be in front of one.
I was just about to say,
you know what I'm saying?
I was just about to say, when Jim Gavin was running for judge a couple elections ago, he was like, this is a very serious job. And when you see people, they're not having their best day.
Right.
So how you adjudicate these cases and process this information and the tone you convey matters. And that actually stuck with me. And I think was sort of the origin of this, like, we have to be relentlessly optimistic idea that I tout of, as leaders, we have an obligation to set the tone, set the culture, and set expectations. And when you're optimistic about the work that's being done, your colleagues and your teammates are going to feel it's going to be, infectious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to, in my opinion, really invite them to see the world as it should be, not as it is, as it should be. And when they see you excited and optimistic and hopeful about the work that they're doing, that's then going to encourage them to dream big, to pitch the big idea, to think outside of the box, right? So being optimistic is a real serious, for me, leadership discipline. That's not easy.
No,
it's not easy.
I'm guilty of not doing it.
Because you will get those setbacks. You will sit at a panel and hear somebody say something and be like, what? Right? And people pay attention to how you respond and how you do that. And that's something about the job that I really kind of learned in the job, like, through trial by fire.
Hell yeah. Nah, dude, I feel you. I think this was a great conversation. I feel a lot better about everything. I think you're absolutely right about the optimism. I know you had a great tagline on LinkedIn. What was your title?
Relentless optimist.
That's right. I was trying to remember that. I was like, I was like, it's something optimist.
It's to me, it is something that, you don't need to have a title, right? We all have power, right? As individuals, we don't need titles. We don't get our power from titles. We get it from how we treat each other, how we get buy-in, how we work together. So my hope is that, we can continue to work together and see the world, see Reading as it should be, and take these concrete steps to get there.
Yeah, dude, let's do it.
Our comeback story.
Let's go.
Starts today.
Jack, thanks for coming in, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate it.
Whenever you want to come back, doors open, bro.
That's it.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Take care.
Thank you.